Big scratching.
You're lots of fun, Baloo.
Little America, rest in peace.
Before Pixar, before The Lion King, before CGI jungles and motion capture tigers, there was The Jungle Book. Walt Disney's final, personally supervised masterpiece didn't just save the studio, it redefined animation's soul. It gave us Baloo's lazy groove, Shere Khan's chilling calm, and that jazzy, sun-drenched swagger of the bare necessities. But behind the lush vines and swinging melodies was chaos, feuds, rewrites, scrapped villains, and a creative team in open rebellion. So, cue the drums and follow the man-cub down the path of mystery, because here are 20 weird, wild, and wonderful facts you didn't know about The Jungle Book. Early drafts of The Jungle Book followed Rudyard Kipling's original stories. They were grim. The script, written by Bill Peet, included death, despair, and a far more sinister Shere Khan who stalked Mowgli like a predator in a horror film. When Walt Disney read it, he slammed it shut and said, "We're not making that picture." Pete was furious and quit the studio entirely, ending a 25-year career. Disney tossed the entire script and hired a new team to reimagine the jungle as vibrant, musical, and funny. The shift from eerie to energetic saved the project, and it became one of the most upbeat adventure musicals ever made. Imagine if Baloo had been a tragic loner instead of a dancing bear. The movie's tone would have changed cinema history. The Jungle Book was Walt Disney's final personal project. He supervised story meetings, reviewed song demos, and handpicked animators right up until his death in December 1966, less than a year before the movie's release. When the team finished the film in 1967, they screened it in silence at the studio. Many reportedly cried. Animators said it was the last time Walt's fingerprints touched every part of a Disney feature. His vision was clear: keep it light, joyful, full of heart. The studio's younger artists feared Disney's passing might end their era. Instead, The Jungle Book became a global hit and reminded audiences why his magic mattered. It's no wonder the end credits quietly read for Walt, a goodbye wrapped in melody. When Disney first saw early tests of Baloo's scenes, some executives hated him. They thought his slow, goofy rhythm and simple bare necessities routine dragged the story down. Animator Frank Thomas argued otherwise. He's the soul of the movie. Disney sided with Thomas, telling his team, "We need someone who moves like the music." So animator Ollie Johnston studied bear footage, jazz dancing, and even comedians' body language to make Baloo's movements feel spontaneous, yet musical. That bet paid off. Baloo became one of the most beloved animated characters ever, embodying carefree fun and fatherly warmth all at once. Without him, The Jungle Book would have been far less human. Who's your favorite Disney sidekick? Baloo, Genie, or Timon and Pumbaa? Comment your pick and smash that like button if you still hum the bare necessities. George Sanders, the Oscar-winning actor behind Shere Khan, delivered his lines with such cold, aristocratic menace that even the animators got chills. He improvised many of his quiet pauses and drawls, adding psychological tension where the script had simple dialogue. During recording sessions, Sanders reportedly warned one technician, "If I were truly this tiger, you'd be dead by now." The voice was smooth, hypnotic, and dangerously polite, a perfect match for a predator who kills without raising his voice. Animators said Sanders' performance gave the tiger more personality than any villain before him. His tone inspired Shere Khan's slow, graceful movements, modeled after a hunting cat and a British gentleman. To this day, that calm, purring menace remains one of Disney's most chilling villain voices. Would you agree? What other villain was so sophisticated? Let us know in the comments below. If Kaa's hypnotic coils and slithering grin look familiar, that's because his animation was recycled from the sword in the stone's snake scene, specifically from the character Madam Mim. Disney reused sequences and tweaked facial expressions to save time and money. Even more fascinating is that Kaa was voiced by the same actor who played Winnie the Pooh, Sterling Holloway. The cheerful, airy tone added comedy to the snake's menace. Walt loved the weird contrast, a lovable voice paired with predatory charm. The team used transparent overlays and early motion tests to make the hypnotic eyes shimmer on screen, all hand-painted. That rainbow swirl became an iconic Disney visual effect decades before digital animation existed. King Louie, the jazz-singing orangutan, was a late addition to the movie, and a risky one. Disney cast Louis Prima, a New Orleans jazz legend, to voice him. But early test audiences criticized the character for racial undertones. Walt Disney personally defended the decision, saying, "He's a jazz king, not a racial symbol." Still, animators took care to make Louie's movements mimic Prima's own exuberant stage performances rather than stereotypes. They even filmed Prima's live band performing I Wanna Be Like You for the animators to study. The result was a wild, joyous sequence that stole the show, and a groundbreaking blend of jazz, comedy, and cartoon physics that predated Fantasia 2000's musical experiments by decades. In a bid to keep the film modern, Disney's writers based the Four Vultures' look and banter on the Beatles, complete with mop-top haircuts and Liverpool accents. The studio actually invited the Fab Four to voice them, but scheduling conflicts and possibly John Lennon's refusal killed the deal. Still, the band's playful influence remained. The Vultures' harmonies and gentle humor softened the film's darker third act. Their song, That's What Friends Are For, was meant as a Beatles-style anthem of unity. The ironic twist? When the movie premiered, younger audiences instantly recognized the spoof, while older viewers didn't notice at all. The Beatles' spirit lingers even now, 4 mop-haired birds singing friendship in a jungle of predators. By 1965, Disney's animation department was nearly bankrupt. Sleeping Beauty had flopped, Sword in the Stone underperformed, and morale was sinking. When The Jungle Book hit theaters, it grossed over $200 million globally, unheard of for a cartoon at the time. That success revived faith in hand-drawn animation and funded the next decade of Disney classics like Robin Hood and The Rescuers. Many historians credit The Jungle Book as the movie that saved Disney. Without it, the studio might have pivoted entirely to live-action productions. Walt's cheerful musical gamble kept the medium alive and kept hundreds of animators employed. It was literally the bare necessity of the company's survival. The film's story department, led by Larry Clemens, reportedly clashed with Walt almost weekly. Some wanted a faithful Kipling adaptation, others pushed for full musical comedy. Walt's answer? Fun wins. At one point, animators would sneak darker drawings into the storyboards, Mowgli nearly drowning, Shere Khan's bloody kills, only for Walt to tear them down the next morning. The director later said, "We built this picture by arguing every day. It worked." The film struck the perfect balance. Tension for adults, joy for kids. That creative friction created gold. If you were in that room, would you fight for dark realism or musical fun? Drop your side below and hit like if you think Walt's instincts were pure genius. Before George Bruns's jazzy orchestration, The Bare Necessities was just a folksy demo written by Terry Gilkyson, the only surviving song from the original darker script. Walt initially rejected it for sounding too simple, but when the team tested it with Baloo's animation, everyone started tapping their feet. It captured the carefree heart Walt wanted: warmth, rhythm, and effortless joy. The song went on to earn an Oscar nomination and become one of Disney's most enduring hits. Decades later, the title alone defines the movie's mood: simple pleasures, sunny spirits, and friendship in chaos. Ironically, the song that almost got cut became The Jungle Book's anthem of life. To get Bagheera's smooth, controlled grace right, animators studied panther footage from zoos and wildlife documentaries frame by frame. They discovered panthers move with both power and subtlety, shoulders rolling first, then the head lowering in silence. Animator Milt Kahl used this as a blueprint for Bagheera's reserved movements, a visual contrast to Baloo's bouncy rhythm. Kahl even described Bagheera as the butler of the jungle. Every gesture, every tail flick communicates patience and intellect. That contrast, playful bear versus disciplined cat, became the backbone of Mowgli's emotional tug-of-war between freedom and responsibility. Shere Khan was originally just a background threat, mentioned but unseen. It wasn't until halfway through production that Walt insisted the story needed a real sense of danger. The animation team scrambled to design him in less than 6 months. They based his stripes on real Bengal tiger footage and modeled his gait after aristocratic villains from British films. Voice actor George Sanders' slow, cultured delivery inspired animators to exaggerate his posture: upright, composed, deadly calm. Adding him so late was a nightmare for scheduling, but it transformed the movie. Without Shere Khan's menacing poise, the jungle's wild rhythm would have lacked its predator's heartbeat. Originally, Mowgli was supposed to return to the man village reluctantly, guided by Bagheera's logic. Walt thought it felt cold. The second version had him chased out of the jungle by fire, too bleak. Finally, Walt dreamed up the now famous water-fetching girl scene. "It needs warmth," he said. Animators redesigned her eyes to mirror Mowgli's curiosity, giving him a natural reason to leave without heartbreak. That one tender glance turned the ending from tragedy to transformation, a goodbye filled with growth, not grief. The jungle didn't reject him, it raised him well enough to move on. The so-called 9 old men, Disney's senior animators, were exhausted and skeptical about The Jungle Book. Some thought Disney's constant rewrites showed he'd lost touch with storytelling. Others feared audiences wanted realism, not talking animals. When Walt died, the team almost halted production in grief. But after rewatching his recorded notes, they pressed on, determined to honor him. Their unity shows in every frame: Baloo's carefree bounce, Bagheera's quiet dignity, Shere Khan's regal menace. They turned sorrow into one last dance for Walt. If you could say one thing to Walt Disney after seeing The Jungle Book, what would it be? Drop it below, and like if you think he'd be proud of his team. One of Disney's most charming coincidences is that Mowgli's voice came from Bruce Reitherman, the young son of the film's director, Wolfgang Wooly Reitherman. The boy often visited his father at the studio, wandering between storyboards and animation desks. When casting struggled to find a natural voice that didn't sound too trained, Walt reportedly pointed at Bruce and said, "Let's try him." His delivery was pure and unschooled, exactly what they needed. Bruce recorded his lines in short bursts, sometimes with his dad behind the microphone feeding cues like, "Now sound grumpy," or "Laugh like you mean it." That authenticity gave Mowgli an innocent stubbornness no professional actor could match. Ironically, Bruce had already voiced Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, meaning he unknowingly embodied 2 of Disney's most beloved childhood heroes. Not bad for a kid just tagging along to visit Dad's office. "I Want to Be Like You" isn't just a song. It's a jazz earthquake brought to life in drawings. For the first time in Disney history, animators were told to animate to the rhythm of the live music rather than have the music composed afterward. Louis Prima and his band recorded multiple takes full of improvisation, scatting, and ad-libs that constantly changed tempo. Instead of fighting it, the animators leaned in. They watched film reels of Prima jumping, spinning, and throwing his trumpet in the air, and used his exact moves to choreograph King Louie's dance. The artists even layered multiple animation loops so that the music's syncopation would feel alive rather than perfectly timed. The result was a jam session on film, unpredictable, chaotic, and irresistibly fun. It was the first Disney sequence to swing instead of march, and it still feels wild 60 years later. At first glance, Colonel Hathi's Parade of Elephants looks like a silly interlude, but beneath the trumpets and flapping ears is a quiet joke on human pomp. Composer George Bruns modeled the Elephant March on real British military marches, then deliberately slowed the tempo so it sounded proud but clumsy. Every elephant lumbers half a beat late, their trumpets slightly off-key, creating a comedic dissonance that mocks rigid. Military precision. Disney's storymen described it as the army that forgot why it was marching. Animators reinforced the gag by making Hathi's movements self-important yet constantly derailed. He salutes himself, forgets orders, and calls roll like a general who's lost his troops. Audiences laughed at the slapstick, but Disney veterans knew it was subtle satire, the jungle's animals mimicking mankind's most pointless rituals and doing it with a lot more heart. One reason the Jungle Book feels so rich is that every major animal was crafted by a different legendary animator, each with their own rhythm, philosophy, and movement language. Frank Thomas, who handled Baloo, gave the bear loose shoulders and musical weight, studying jazz dancers for bounce and flow. Milk Call made Bagheera sleek, angular, and efficient, every paw movement elegant, like a butler gliding through a ballroom. John Lounsbury animated Shere Khan with aristocratic stiffness, small motions, narrow eyes, and a predator's patience. Ollie Johnston's Kaa was pure elasticity, coiling like a spring toy with gleeful menace. Walt wanted the jungle to feel like an orchestra, each animal a different instrument. The challenge was syncing them together. Animators literally swapped timing charts to keep eye lines and reactions consistent. That invisible harmony made the film's jungle feel alive, unpredictable, and real. From 1963 to 1967, The Jungle Book went through chaos, fired writers, abandoned drafts, and endless redesigns. Bill Pete's original script was dark and political. When Walt scrapped it, half the crew nearly walked out. Then came new songs, rewritten storyboards, and a full tone shift from drama to musical adventure. Each restart meant redrawing hundreds of feet of animation by hand. Meanwhile, Disney was switching to its Xerox technique, transferring animators' pencil lines directly to cells instead of tracing them in ink. It was cheaper, but left rough, visible outlines. Rather than hide it, Walt embraced the sketchy look as part of the film's warmth. When production finally ended, artists joked they'd survived their own jungle ordeal. Ironically, that exhaustion gave the movie its raw, human feel, imperfect, spontaneous, and full of life, just like Baloo's dance itself. During production, Walt Disney would walk into his office, cue up an early demo of the bare necessities, and let it loop for hours. His staff sometimes grew tired of hearing the same tune, but Walt insisted, "If it still makes you smile the 10th time, it's right." He believed the song embodied the entire movie's message: optimism, simplicity, and joy. Visitors recalled seeing him tapping his pencil in rhythm, eyes closed, humming softly. After meetings grew tense or story sessions stalled, he'd start the record again to reset the room's mood. When Walt passed away before the film's release, the studio continued the tradition, replaying that same recording during final edits. To the animators, it became a quiet goodbye. The film ends on laughter and light because Walt wanted the jungle and life to dance on long after he was gone. Conclusion. And there you have it, The Jungle Book, 1967. A film born from turmoil, saved by rhythm, and sealed with Walt Disney's final touch of magic. From the bleeding pencils of animators to the jazz that made the jungle swing. It wasn't just a cartoon, it was a heartbeat. So next time you hum the bare necessities, remember, that simple groove carried Disney through its darkest days. Which fact surprised you most? Drop it below, hit like if you learned something new, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the world's most timeless movies.